And then please be reminded that if you don't want to be recorded, this would be the time, obviously, to turn off your camera for the rest of the session. All right, then, so let's begin. Okay, so I guess the first question really from this session is, one of the key tenets of Women Ed throughout everything is this idea of being 10% braver. And I guess really we just want to put it out to our speakers as a big interest. So, in your career, how would you say that have you had a particular moment that really you felt that you took that step to being 10% braver and how it affected your career, but also a little bit about yourself as well? Because obviously we've had these sessions today and obviously some of us have been dipping in and out. But yeah, to rephrase, what's been your journey so far, and also maybe a key example of how you've been 10% braver. So maybe Natasha, you'd like to begin.
Okay. So do you know what, it's so funny actually, because I've just been having this, did this session about how to slay your interview and stuff. And I was talking to everybody about having a mentor, and Helen was actually my mentor when I was interviewing. So I was saying to them, you need to have a mentor. And I would say that was most probably one of my 10% braver bits. I kind of didn't really know where to go. I was interviewing for senior leadership positions, and I wasn't really getting anywhere. I was feeling really knocked, like literally battered, bruised, punched and kicked, all at the same time. And the lovely Helen was amazing. And it was stepping out of my comfort zone, because I don't know, you need enough confidence to be able to tell somebody else how you're feeling as well. So it's quite hard to say to someone, do you know what, this is how I'm feeling at the moment. I don't feel great. And I did know why I was feeling like it, but I didn't really know why I was feeling like it. And the difference was, I suppose Helen had then coached me into identifying what it was that I was, I suppose, having a problem with, or, and knowing that actually, was it really my problem or was it someone else's problem? And ultimately it boiled down to the fact that I wasn't really applying for the right jobs, the right positions, something that really fit the same thought process as me, until I applied to where I am now. So that for me was most probably one of the biggest eye-openers, was having that conversation with somebody else, and really recognizing that actually, like, I needed to take a bit of responsibility for what I was applying to, what I wanted to be, and being confident in who I was, and knowing, I think the biggest thing that I took away from it was knowing that I didn't need to change me. I was just not applying to the places that I would fit into. I was, that's what I needed to do. I needed to do my research. I needed to really look at where it was, and actually, did they have the same kind of ethos, moral values, etc., that I had. And that was, I suppose, the biggest challenge there for me. And yeah, I mean, people there are asking about mentors. So there are loads of companies that have mentors, and I think Helen can most probably direct you a little bit more into the right place. But you know what? Women Ed is the biggest network ever. If you literally just went onto the Women Ed Twitter and just said, "Oh, are there any mentors out there?" There will be people that will offer you free advice, support for free, just for a couple of sessions, just to kind of get you kick-started. It's really, really important to use the Women Ed network, because honestly, like, it's there. It's there, and that's what we're all about, and we're all about supporting and helping each other. So I had direct support and help from Helen, but I also that's when I became really, really active and part of Women Ed, and that my confidence grew from that, to be fair. Have I missed anything else? I feel like I'm waffling.
No, that was great. I mean, what do you think, Rebecca?
Oh my goodness, the thunder just crashed and the lightning just crackled just as you said that. Do you know what? I think the biggest thing for me has been to relax and be myself, and stop trying to fit a mold of what I thought I needed to be. Because every time I tried to do it, or every time I tried to be somebody else, because I saw somebody doing something in a way that I thought was the right way to do it, I failed miserably. And it's taken, and it's still the confidence levels still go up and down. It doesn't matter what position you're in or how much experience you've had, you still, it's to be yourself and to be truly authentic in showing up as a leader. I often say that I'm Mrs. Findlay. Mrs. Findlay is the person who, she's confident, she can speak in front of a group, she can do all these things, and then Rebecca's got no chance, you know, like she can't even remember to pack lunch for her child. So it's about owning that and owning the type of person. I want to bring Rebecca into Mrs. Findlay and Mrs. Findlay into Rebecca, and I think allowing that to happen and allowing my weaknesses to show and asking for help is where I've been 10% braver.
Amazing. I think a lot of people can relate there, can't they? I don't know if anyone's, as yes, some shaking of the heads, just that idea of when you said no matter how experienced you are, there's sometimes always that doubt. It's amazing how many of us that really resonates with altogether. What about you, Helen?
Oh gosh, just listening to these and thinking, yeah, that's just brilliant. And just so, you feel so kind of proud to be part of humanity, don't you, when you hear that, because it's absolutely true. And I've come through my school leadership journey, so out the other side, and that's why I'm working with school leaders. But I think that I've had to have it baked into me from an early stage, just that you have to do this, you have to keep reaching out, you have to keep stretching forward, because if you don't, who will? So when I think about even my very first job as a teacher, I remember thinking, I was a boys' school, and in fact I was their first full-time female member of staff. It was like only 1993, it's like not that long ago. It's in the UK, and I remember thinking there were children, boys coming from overseas and into the school, and nobody was providing any English language teaching for them. And I'd done some English language teaching. I was a linguist anyway, but done some English language teaching. So I remember going to the head and saying, I can do something, let me do this. And I was going to do it anyway, but I just thought I'd better get a bit of permission. And then I built an EAL department there as well, just small, just tiny, just doing little bits, got a couple of books and so on. And then when a job as a head of department came up, thinking, I'm going to just go for that. I'm just going to, and you've just got to, there's that feeling, isn't there, that where you've got your sort of like, you almost have to take a breath and think, can I? And then I'll just do it. I'll just do it. And those are the moments. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes to do it. So you've got to keep working forward, which is why I ended up as a head for 13 years in 3 different schools. And now I feel as though I'm doing something amazing with what I can do, working with leaders and so on. I would say that one of my big brave moments was deciding to do that as well. But I kind of don't want to focus on that now, because I don't want people to think about life beyond leadership when you just I want you to be leaders. I want you to stay and become amazing leaders for all these young people. So there we go.
Can I just add to that, Carly? So do you know, there's a couple of things I think are really, really, really consistent across every kind of person I speak to in general, or a part of the Women Ed network and the network of women that I've kind of come across as of late. One of the things is positivity. Like, just as much as we may feel a little bit unconfident sometimes, and you need somebody to kind of give you a bit of a well done and a stroke and all of this, everybody is super positive. Like, everybody goes in and they're like, do you know what, we can do this, we can work together, we can get through this. And so that's one thing I would say, everybody just needs to remain positive. And if you're feeling a little bit non-positive or whatever it might be, you need to kind of get yourself to that position again. That's one of the things I would say. One of the things that Helen just said there as well was it didn't matter that they were going to, you asked out of politeness that you were going to set this EAL teaching up, but we just did it. Like, I've done the same. And I would say that most leaders in schools, they're asking because they're like, oh, yeah, I kind of should. But you're going to do it anyway, because you know it's the right thing for the children. And what I would say to you is 2 things here. If you are in a school and you do something like that and you're knocked for doing that, you're in the wrong place, because actually you're never going to be able to grow there. Yeah, so get yourself out. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to say to you. Get yourself out of that place, because if somebody is, because you know, even if I've worked in places where I haven't been totally happy, nobody is arguing with you or upset with you if you're going to do some extra work for free. Yeah, if you haven't got the position, you haven't got a label, you haven't got a name above it, and you do it, no school is going to knock that, because generally at the heart of everything, every school leader in every school wants the best for the children. Okay, so if you are being knocked, then you're definitely in the wrong place, because they don't care about kids. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The next thing is actually, and this is one of the kind of the attitudes of I suppose upcoming middle leaders that I would generally then say, I'm not really going to employ that person for the next position, is when you have conversations with people that want to be a middle leader or want to be a senior.
Oh, maybe a few technical difficulties there. Can I just check? Can you also hear anything? Can you give me a head nod if you're like me, you can't hear anything at all? Right, okay then. No worries. Well, hopefully Natasha will be able to come back to us. But this is probably an opportune time to pass over to Sadie. So Sadie, do you want to carry on maybe to the next question?
Yeah, no worries. I wondered if it was just something that was going on with me and everything just stopped, but yeah, okay, we're rolling. So I guess that the second question we had was kind of zooming out in the bigger picture. What do you feel like are some of the challenges that are facing women going into leadership in the international school context? Because we can, I guess, look at the personal level and some of the challenges that we face, but also the a much wider kind of structural level. Maybe Bex, if I can go over to you first and get your thoughts on what you think some of these barriers are.
Okay. I think the barriers are in place in as far as there is a lot of stereotypical leadership in international school leadership, and they are in place. I think we've talked about them throughout this afternoon, and Women Ed talks about them regularly. But I think the way that I would kind of shine a light on it is the barriers that I'm putting in place for myself, and in the way that I'm trying to fit, like I said earlier, fit different molds, but also the fact that you try so hard to be the stereotype that we're all looking at. And Helen said earlier, you know, that we need to fight harder to break these stereotypes down. And I think the biggest challenge is have I and do you have the resolve and the confidence and the courage to do that? And I think that's the issue, because I don't always know that I have. And whilst I might think things in my head are inherently wrong, or think things do not align with my values, do I have the courage to always stand up against them as a leader? I'm not sure that I do, and I want to get better at that. And I think until I and us as a collective have the courage to stand up and say and call these things out, rather than being seen to be challenging the patriarchy or whatever it is, that it's not. It's about equity. It's not about being better. It's about equity. And for me, I feel, just to give you a quick example, I remember as a young teacher, I was at a really, really big school in Liverpool, and the staff room was filled for a staff meeting with about 70 odd people, and there'd been an incident that day, and everyone in the staff room had been talking about it, and they were like, oh, we're going to say something in a staff meeting. I must have been about 25 years old, and Bex, you say something, because we can't stand this anymore, and we all agree with you, and it's really bad. And I remember, I remember it like it was yesterday, speaking out in front of all the people to the boss politely about this incident, and I went, and everyone else agrees with me, and there was this sudden silence, and everybody else's heads were down, and nobody kind of stood by me, and I kind of crept back into my chair, and that was the end of it. And whilst it's not exactly the same, because I know there's lots of people fighting for this cause, to really have the courage to step forward and fight and put across that leadership can look different, and it can be just as effective, and if not better, I think is the biggest challenge, in my opinion, because it's easy enough to say there are stereotypes and we don't like them, but what are we going to do about it, and who's going to stand with me when we do it?
Thanks, Bex. Yeah, that's a really powerful story, and I think what comes up, what's interesting from that is we all have different levels of vulnerabilities in terms of stepping forward, and I guess there's all different times where it's maybe not easier, but there is a certain periods where it is maybe we have a stronger chance to step forward, or a better opportunity to do so. Helen, can we go over to you and kind of get some of your thoughts about the challenges of getting more women into leadership in the international school context?
Yes, and this is one of the things we were talking about in the session just earlier, about there are prejudices, they're still there, and that's one of my pleas is we have to keep helping people understand who we are as individuals, and that's why I feel privileged to be working that from a recruitment perspective, because I know that we're able to help present people as they are and understand that, free of those, or free of a perception that it is that you can't be a really good leader if you're a woman, which is just so daft. It sounds odd coming out of my mouth, but there's still these assumptions there's still these prejudices, and particularly in different cultural contexts as well. So my advice is, we have to be strong. If not us, then who? And we've got to keep moving forward, and you should never feel alone, because there are lots of other people, and fundamentally, you're right. So keep working on that. Keep working on that. And to come this not from a defensive perspective, but from this with the strength of knowing that this is what we want. This is the world we want to live in. This is why we're in education, to help young people grow up into a world where everybody is equal, where everybody is respected. And that's what we do in education, in the classroom, in our schools. So we need to be able to just make sure that the structures are in place, and we're feeding that, and we're strong enough, and we don't question ourselves. And we're not alone. People are not alone, but it's still tough. There's still a lot to be done. That's okay, because you're up for it. I can see that totally.
I love that, Helen. I love that. If not us, then who, right? And we are the people that are kind of responsible for creating the futures of the future, and kind of encouraging our students to take that forward. Natasha, I've seen you back in the room. We're just kind of discussing.
Sorry.
No worries. We're just kind of discussing like the kind of barriers to getting more women in leadership within the international school context. I just kind of wondered what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, I think I popped in there and I heard Bex talking about stereotypes, and I would say that that's definitely a big I don't know, barrier for most women in general, because obviously it's always seen, especially internationally, actually. If you just look at the makeup of the leadership teams in any international school, I mean, I'm lucky. I've gone into a school where actually it's quite mixed, but actually it's it's restricted. People. I suppose schools also have this view of what the parents want to see, rather than challenging what the parents actually need to start seeing. I was having a conversation about this the other day, because I'm a network lead for a DEI network for BSME, and we were having this same conversation. It's just like, oh, the parents expect us to see, this white middle class male, and I'm like, well, I am like, not white. I'm not a male, and I'm definitely not middle class. And also my age is on the wrong side of me as well. Like you never complain about being too young, but in this situation, it's also been a problem, and that's been I suppose a negative for me, is being too young. And actually you kind of like have to then pick yourself up from all of that, and that's where the confidence does kick in, because you need to be able to say, well, do you know what, I can do this job just as well as anybody else. And it's really challenging, actually, because you don't feel like you should be having to have this conversation in 2021. And I think that's why we find it so difficult, because we're like, why am I still having this conversation in 2021 about the fact that I'm a woman, about the fact that I'm not white, about the fact that I'm not, do you know what I mean, in my mid-50s trying to take up a more senior leadership position? Like it's just not fair. Actually, it's just not fair that we're having to have these conversations, but we are having these conversations. And quite frankly, looking at the amount of women on just this network meeting now, I mean, that is amazing, and we're stepping forward, but it is exhausting. You know, it's just really, really difficult. And Bex has just said there, the language that is used and what's acceptable is actually quite shocking. And I would say even more so internationally, like things that we accept as the norm is really challenging. But and I know Bex has said there, where she said, you know, she was, you know, people were like, oh yeah, I'll stand up with you, and then they all back down. Do you know what? You just have to be brave. You just have to be brave. And sometimes you will feel like, you know, you're on your own. And I definitely feel like that most of the time, if I'm honest. In different positions. I'm actually really lucky in the school I'm in, but should I be saying I'm lucky, or should it just be like that anyway? That's another thing as well, isn't it? I'm not lucky, actually. No, I'm not lucky. This is the way it should be. But look, I've just said that, and I have to remind myself that I'm not lucky. I'm not lucky. This is the way it should be. Like, does any like middle-class white male man in his 50s say that he's lucky to be there? No, he's not, actually. I've worked my bum off to get to where I am, and that's where we all need to be firm in that, and firm in our conviction. So accent in a British school. So can I just address that issue there? Because I was having this conversation about this the other day, okay? And there's things that we need to tackle in schools. And when you are in a leadership position, or not in a leadership position, but you've got a bit of an opening and having conversations with people, you need to be talking about that recruitment process in the beginning, you know, things like native English speakers on the application process. Do you know what? I'll have a few really rude words to say about that, actually. We need to start having opening statements about how inclusive we are as schools, and we welcome applicants from whatever it might be. That's what we should be having on applications, not, you know, what pay do you get, what this, like, why do you need to know my pay now? Because you're going to pay me that much money now? Because actually, no, I kind of want a bit better. So all of this stuff, we really need to start thinking about. Like, I've just, you know, I've had enough. Like, I've had enough of having the same conversations as well. Like, I shouldn't be continuing to have these conversations. We're fed up. But also then it's like, oh, and now you're being really aggressive. No, I'm not being aggressive, actually. I'm just asking for what's fair. Like, that's all I'm asking for, just what is fair. Like, so yeah, and everyone's laughing at me because it's so true. Like, how many conversations are we having like this? How many women here are sitting here now just going, hang on a minute, this is so right. Like, and do you know what it is? They're just scared, because actually if they had all of us in one room, it would be like, oh, do you know what? Actually, we just need to just stop, because this is wrong. And it is wrong. But the issue is people are scared of having these conversations when they're, because it's fine. We're all comfortable here because we're all pretty much on the same page, okay? But when we then go back into schools on whatever day we start, Sunday, Monday, whatever it is, and we sit there, everyone's just sitting there thinking, oh, do you know what, I'm on tenterhooks. Should I really say this? Shouldn't I say this, etc., etc.? And it's not okay. But what we need to start doing is tackling it. That native or the British accent nonsense. I had to address this with a parent the other day, because they basically, someone was covering the class and they were like, oh, you know, well, I want somebody that's got a British accent. And I was like, what? Did you just say, like, did you openly say that to me in the playground in front of people, by the way, like it was normal? I was like, sorry, like, her English is, I'm from London. I barely speak English, can I just say? And I'm definitely not the best person to be, do you know, but it was okay for me, but not okay for this woman. I was like, she had to study English in terms of it being grammatically correct. I can tell you now, she will write an essay 1,000,000 times better than I can. She will be able to speak more eloquently than I can. Her accent has no reflection on her standard of English. Let me just point that out to you. But it's all of these stereotypes that we have associated with things, you know, it's just not okay. Yeah, anyway, that was a bit of a rant, wasn't it? Sorry, but
all the way through you could see people like nodding. And what I had to call, this is the moment where I think we all wanted to be like,
hallelujah.
it's amazing how many of us are really having these conversations. I've had conversations with Emma. If you can see Emma, when she's one of our network lead team, about this before, you know, in terms of accents. And me and Becky, we've talked about, you know, being an ethnic minority internationally and being a woman as well. So we're all having these conversations. And you're completely right. It is about being brave, isn't it? And just still putting this out there and sort of working together. So don't worry, Natasha, you had the room. For sure, definitely then. Which I guess
I'll just say though, like everybody here, this is what Women Ed are about though. This is, you know, this is the direction. These are the conversations everyone's having. And as long as, you know, if we just put ourselves in pockets all over, like the change will happen, it's coming, it's happening. You know, this is much better than it was 10 years ago. And these honest and open conversations. And the more you do it, the more you build those networks, the more conversations you have. You know, the more you feel confident, like everyone's going to leave this today, honestly, like all of the Women Ed Thai group, like this is amazing because everyone's going to leave here feeling fresh, feeling motivated, feeling like they can tackle something this week. You know, it's so necessary. So thank you all for being here because, you know, and everybody that's like listening in and inputting, it's really, really, really good. And it means that change is happening. We're disrupting.
Becky, do you want to add? You've got your hand up. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the fact that my school's currently advertising for a deputy head of secondary, and there are not enough women even applying. The vast majority of applicants are men. They don't have any experience. They haven't read the job description. Their letters are poor and their CVs are worse. Please, can we start actually putting ourselves out there? Because I can guarantee half of you in this room now will be overqualified for the job, never mind qualified enough. But for some reason, we're not putting ourselves out there. And yet the men who are, they're really not cutting the mustard. So I think there's plenty of opportunities out there. We need to start taking them up. And I would love to have some applicants who could actually do the job, please.
Emma, you put your hand up as well. Do you want to add? Or can I just say, Helen has to dash. So if we could just give her a goodbye, and thank you so much, Helen, for coming today.
Thank you, everyone. Keep in touch. Yeah, go for it. Speak soon. Bye. Bye.
I'm sorry, Emma, do you want to add?
I put it in the chat as well, but I think the big conversation in my experience of international school has to be had with what the marketing team are put out there. The number of women I've spoken to who are of a certain age, or the pictures they're putting out, if you look on many of the big international school websites, will be this, you know, distinguishedly grey white man in his 50s in the suit. And that is the idea that we're giving of what success is. So if we're trying to be braver, it can be very difficult if the posters, the website, everything. So I think this is also a big marketing conversation that needs to be had. And on top of that, then what are we telling our pupils also what success looks like? It's not everybody that I'm looking at right now. And I know a lot of colleagues who have been hurt professionally, but also personally, because they're not included in the video, or they're not included in, even though they're working so hard. So I think anyone who has any influence with the marketing team in their school, it's huge. That's a huge part of the problem, how I see it.
No worries. And maybe a final comment from Jackie before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I have a question for those who are already in leadership, like Becky, and for the people who are recruiting. I guess, do you, or does any, I don't know, I'm thinking about like what kind of support are women given who are not already leaders and this is their first leadership position? Like, is that something we're promoting? Because I don't see it being promoted. I feel like because it's very male dominated, and men stereotypically don't lead with vulnerability. So they assume that they know everything, they pretend that they know everything, and so then they don't ask for extra support. Whereas women, you know, we lead with that vulnerability, we support that. And so are we told when we go for leadership positions, like, you might not know everything and that's completely fine, we will support you to learn it when you get here?
I think it depends on the interviewers and the school you're going to. If you're lucky enough to be interviewed for a school that's open-minded, then yeah, no one is the finished article. It doesn't exist. Like, none of us. You could be in that job for decades and you've still got lots to learn. But you're entirely right, Jackie. There's a there's a huge amount of assumption. And I think that's part of the narrative that's been created in international education by the male leaders, that there's some sort of secret formula of being really good at what you do, when actually it's all about fake it till you make it. And I think that's something that doesn't sit very well with women. We're not comfortable with just rolling on and pretending like we know what we're doing, but actually leading during a pandemic, that's 100% what everyone's doing. But you won't find many people admitting that. They want you to believe there's a manual they're referring to, so they know what they're doing. So yeah, I think it all depends. And the thing is, the more female leaders you get, the more opportunity there is to support other females to do the role and learn the ropes. But you've got to crack the percentages to be more reflective of the teaching profession first. And as we know, especially in Southeast Asia, the vast majority of leadership positions are fulfilled by men. But I do think a big part of that is because we're not applying for them enough. We're not being 10% braver often enough, and we're not putting ourselves in the mix. So the change has sometimes got to come from within as well. We need to be pushing ourselves and singing about our credible ability to do the job.
100%. And I guess in a way as well, one thing that, I mean, most of us seem to be affiliated with the Women Ed Network as well, but when it comes to Women Ed, it's really what we're about, and acknowledging these things. How can we work together to improve on that? But also, it isn't about being really clear that it isn't about Women Ed hates men. It's about knowing our allies in our male colleagues and them coming through and us working collectively as a team to improve these things too. And I know quite a few people touched on that. Bex, do you want to add to that? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, some of the best advice I've had has been from my male colleagues and my male leaders that I've worked with, and I've had many who have mentored me and supported me. So like I said, it's about equity. It's not about us being better than, and it's about working collaboratively together. And when you find people, whether they're, doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter what gender they are, doesn't matter what football team they support, if you find someone that has the same values as you and who you can talk to, you grab onto that and you go grab a coffee and you have those conversations. And the thing is, it might be an informal process, it might happen away from, the formality of a staff meeting or an inset or something like that. It might even just be in the staff room while you're eating your lunch, but you need to grab those moments with whoever it might be. And I also feel that, I don't know, there's a lot of hierarchy within schools. Doesn't matter, again, international or home-based. We don't need to look up for the best advice. We need to look around, okay, because there are people who can, I'm going to call out Tracy Galvin, who's sitting in this room. Tracy works with me, and she is a second career teacher. She is the most fantastic leader, and she has so much more life and industry experience than I do. I go to Tracy to get some advice because Tracy has lived and understands leadership in a whole different way than I do. And this is the sort of thing we should be doing. It doesn't matter whether it's a female or a male. We need to look around, not up. And there's times when you need to ask your boss for some support. And a lot of us are very fortunate to have some very supportive leaders, but always look around.
Thank you so much. I guess this brings us to the last question now, really. Time seems to have flown by when there's really good conversation. But I'm sure everyone in the room right now always has that one colleague that just stands out. I'm thinking about the person in my mind's eye right now, whether it could have been a mentor, an amazing colleague, or a particular leader. So I think one question that we'd like to put to the Q&A panel is, well, I'm sure there has been, so it's not the right way to start the question, but can you think about an outstanding candidate that you've been lucky enough to acquire, and really sort of tease out and give us a summary of what made them so outstanding? Because we've all been to different sessions today focusing on different things. So obviously your nuggets of wisdom have already been given out, but if for those that couldn't attend your session, what would you say would be a summary of an outstanding candidate that's really memorable for you? So I'm not sure who wants to begin. Rebecca, do you want to dig in on this one?
Yeah, do you know, I think ultimately it's for me, it's about relationships, it's about people, it's about those connections that you make. And I you know, going back to Vivian at the beginning, I credit myself with being good with people and being able to forge relationships with people. They don't have to be the same as me for me to connect with them. And what I think is, when I think about outstanding candidates and people that we've recruited, it's when you've had that connection, and whatever level that connection's been on. I mentioned in my session, I love it when an interview becomes like a dialogue, and it becomes when we start debating something, or you go so off-piste from the questions because you've made that connection, you've found that connection, and you just want to talk and agree or disagree or share an anecdote. And so for me, it's about the people, it's about making connections, building those relationships. And of course, you want them to be excellent in the classroom. And of course, you want them to tick all the boxes of whatever it is you consider a great teacher to look like or a great leader to look like. But if they can't work with people, when people are our business, little ones and big ones, then for me, they're not the right person. So it's having that connection, and it's all about the person, relationships.
Thank you, Bex. Natasha, do you want to
add? I would say my first would be relationships as well. Thank you, Bex. I would say the second is attitude. Someone's attitude is usually what sits with me when we've left, and positivity. I think I can't say that enough. And I'm not talking about you smiling and happy and jumping around like Tigger all day, but I'm just saying, you know, having a positive attitude and having the ability to identify solutions rather than constantly bringing problems. And you can pick that up in an interview straight away. You know, when you're giving people anecdotes or scenarios, they can always come back with, oh yeah, but actually if we tried this, or if you did this, or whatever it might be. So attitude is most probably the biggest one. Red flags for me are as soon as someone comes up with excuses, reasons why something can't be done or weren't done, or you know, when it's kind of like, oh well, you know, that wasn't my job, so I wasn't going to do that. That kind of already is like, they're like all of the flags for me. I'm like, yeah, this is not going to work, because yeah, I mean, from a candidate's perspective, they may see it as, oh, you know, well, they just want you to just work, and you don't have a life and all of that. And that's not it at all. But from a leadership perspective, you want to see that people have the right attitude. When we're in work, we're given 100% and 10%, you know, and you do have all of that work-life balance and all of that kind of thing, but it's just a positive attitude with solutions. And I would say, speaking to any other leader at the moment, like, I think it's the norm that if somebody comes to you with a problem, they also come with a solution. And so you can pick that up at interview quite quickly as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, thank you to everyone in this room that's come today. We've actually reached the end of this session. You know, so to have all of you here, from the beginning through to the end, honestly, me and the rest of the team for Women in Thailand, we're so stoked that we've been blessed by your presence today. So I guess just a few key reminders before we come to an end. Before we do that, can we just have a round of applause for all of our presenters today? We had Tilla, we had Rebecca, we had Becky, we've had, you know, everyone in, Natasha coming through, Pink as well with the bilingual session, and Uzma. I just want to give a big shout out to Uzma. She's a member of our Women in Thailand community who has really come through. She's been fantastic in translating our events, you know, and really been helpful for us in trying to make that inclusive, right? You know, we're in Thailand, we want to have that community. So I just had a few questions throughout the day. Key things as a reminder: the recording should be available within the next week. It won't, we don't, Women in Thailand, have our own YouTube account. It'll be on the official women.org YouTube channel. Your presentations from your presenters today should be available from a Google Drive, which will be available over the next week. We'll send you out an email as well, though, so as soon as it goes out, you're aware of how to access all of those materials. Quite a few people, and a common question has been, well, we've talked so much in the presenters so far, I've talked so much about mentoring, about coaching. From the beginning, Katie's session, it's cropped up in Natasha's session, Bex's session, the importance of that connection. And a few people have said, well, great, well, how can I do that? So aside from the practical ways, I just want to give you a heads up, if you're based in Thailand, we're trialing a mentorship program. I know, for example, if Fabisia's got something in the works for maybe next year, if you just can see Heidi, she can give us a wave. Yeah, Heidi's amazing. She's a principal here in Thailand, and she's really coming together with the mentorship program. So if that's something you're interested in, or even if you are not part of Women Ed Thailand and this is something you'd want to be involved in, if you could just send us an email, that would be great. I don't know if one of the network leads could put our email in there. Even if you're not part of our network, or you just want some advice on how to connect with other women within the global network, please do let us know. So I guess without further ado, we hope that you have a fantastic day. And yeah, once more, thank you so much again.
Can I just say, just before you shut, you guys have done such an amazing job. I honestly, like, me and Bex are like, wow, like, so organized, by the way, just from the perspective of having to deliver, but like everybody in the group's like nodding. I think it was this is like the perfect time for recruitment, because obviously everyone's starting to look now from an international perspective with intentions going in and stuff. But I think everybody's leaving here inspired, and everybody's leaving with some sort of takeaway today. So Women Ed Thailand, like, amazing. Thank you so much. You've done such a brilliant job. Yes, like Bex has got a dance going on and everything over there.
I gotta jump in there and just say to Carly, like, I don't know how, I just don't know how you do it. Like, you are phenomenal. Your attention to detail is like exquisite. And I know we've all had little parts to play, but I think Women in Thailand is your baby, and today's event has been, you know, your extra baby, and you're just amazing. So thank you for getting us all motivated, and thank you for your organization and detail.
Thank you so much. But I just want to say, my job is so much easier when I'm surrounded by absolute legends, and I feel like the Women Ed Thailand team, and also Malaysia and every other network in the region, that just, like Bex and Katie, yeah, we'll do it. You know, I just feel like it's indicative of Women Ed. So if you've not been a part of the Women Ed community, can I just please say, get involved, honestly, no matter where you are. If you're in a country right now that doesn't even have a network, set one up. You know, definitely we could, you know, just get in touch with us and let us know. Well, get in touch with Natasha. So as a reminder, she's the Asia strategic lead. So just go to the official Women Ed website, and then you can be put in touch with her. But yeah, thank you so much. But key takeaway, get involved with Women Ed for sure. Have a lovely day, everyone.